Thank you, Your Honor. Before I begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I'm pleased to open the third reading debate on Bill S-6, an act respecting regulatory modernization. The bill has returned to the Senate following pre-study by 7 committees, consisting of over 21 hours of testimony from 48 witnesses, the summaries of which were provided to the Senate Standing Committee on Banking, Trade and Commerce, which in turn presented its report on Tuesday and was adopted by this chamber yesterday.
I would like to thank all committee members for their work on this bill, which has resulted in some improvements to the legislation. The work of committees has also highlighted some broader issues around the need for deeper and faster regulatory reform to ensure that businesses can innovate, prosper, and be globally competitive.
Honourable colleagues, businesses are the backbone of Canada's economic success. They create the products, services, and wealth that have made our country prosperous. As we emerge from the pandemic, Bill S-6 and its successors will help Canadian businesses by ensuring the regulatory system evolves with changing technologies and that they reflect today's realities. A modern regulatory system must do 2 things. A, promote business investment and innovation, and B, ensure the health, safety, and security of Canadians and the protection of the environment. That is what Bill S-6 does. It modifies 29 different acts through 46 common sense amendments to modernize our regulatory system. For example, the bill proposes a minor change to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency Act that would allow the agency to deliver services and allow businesses to interact with them electronically rather than through paper-based transactions. This will reduce the administrative burden for businesses and allow them to be more flexible in their interactions with government. The bill also contains amendments to the Fisheries Act that would clarify that fishery officers have the authority to use alternative measures to taking fishers to court in response to minor violations. This is an authority that was unclear in the existing legislation. Such a change could not only reduce the number of lengthy and costly court processes, but also ensure that small violations do not result in criminal records and the stigma and barriers that come with it. The use of such alternative measures has been supported by the fishing community and Indigenous groups. In addition, amendments to the Canada Transportation Act would allow regulatory changes stemming from updates to international transportation safety standards to be integrated more quickly. These are just some examples of the 46 amendments included in the bill. While the individual effect of each proposal may seem small, they have the potential, taken together, to make a real difference to those who are affected. In fact, many of these changes were proposed by Canadians and by Canadian businesses. What's more, all of the proposals are cost neutral and the associated risks are low to non-existent. Bill S-6 makes sure our system stays up to date and sets up Canadians and businesses for success in the years ahead. As honourable senators know, this bill is meant to be a recurring legislative mechanism. While Bill S-6 is billed as the second annual Regulatory Modernization Act, it is in fact the first standalone bill under the rubric of yearly updates to regulation that was first announced by the government in 2018. The Senate can take some pride in being on the ground floor of a process that I hope will grow in ambition, effectiveness, and efficiency over the years. L'idée du mécanisme récurrent.
The idea of a recurring mechanism for regulatory modernization is a response to legislative challenges raised by businesses and Canadians through consultations and targeted regulatory reviews.
Business stakeholders such as the Economic Strategy Tables and the Advisory Council on Economic Growth have stressed that having such a regularized mechanism in place is critical to improving Canada's regulatory system. In addition, the External Advisory Committee on Regulatory Competitiveness, made up of business, academic, and consumer stakeholders, has called for further efforts to reduce the administrative burden of regulations and ensure that regulations are future-proofed. By amending laws that are too inflexible, too specific, or simply outdated, this bill is an important reminder of the need for ongoing regulatory review and legislation that stands the test of time. In fact, work on the next annual regulatory modernization bill is already underway and is expected to be tabled in Parliament in 2023. Let me return to the good work of our committees in their pre-study of this bill. The content of S-6 was sent to the following 7 committees: Banking, Trade and Commerce, Energy, the Environment and Natural Resources, Agriculture and Forestry, Fisheries and Oceans, Social Affairs, Science and Technology, Foreign Affairs and International Trade, and Transport and Communications. I want to again thank all committee members for their hard work. As a result of specific feedback from committee work, 2 sets of amendments were made to S-6. The Agriculture and Forestry Committee observed that the provisions of what was then Part 6 of the bill should not proceed in isolation, but was better considered as part of broader consultations on the Pest Control Substances Act, which began in March 2022. The government agreed, and that section was duly voted down during clause by clause at the Banking Committee. In addition, I moved 2 related amendments that respond to concerns raised by the Privacy Commissioner in a letter that he wrote to SOCI related to the need for memoranda of agreement between Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada and the agencies with which they share information that is spelled out in S-6. I'm pleased to say that both amendments went forward and are contained in the revised bill before us.
Many committees observe that consultation processes for future regulatory modernization efforts should be transparent, interactive, and inclusive of all relevant stakeholders, not only incumbents in the regulatory system, but also potential new entrants. I agree with these observations.
Many of you have also called for a more ambitious regulatory modernization agenda for the government. I also agree with this sentiment. And to that end, I organized a briefing for all senators on the Canadian government's overall approach to regulatory reform, within which this bill, the annual regulatory modernization bill, is only a small part. An important takeaway from that briefing is that the Treasury Board Secretariat has recently established a pilot project to make it easier for individuals and organizations to improve Canada's regulatory system. I encourage you to check it out at letstalkfederalregulations.ca. There are many moving parts to regulatory reform, only some of which can be addressed through clean-up bills such as S-6. More substantial changes, however, can only be dealt with act by act, which is time-consuming and sometimes politically charged. That is why I believe that the Senate has a special role to play in advocating for regulatory reform and providing leadership on the need for energy, innovation, and persistence on this issue. Perhaps we can consider a special study on how we can improve regulatory modernization in Canada and use it as a marker of the Senate's ongoing attention in this area. That is for another day, and I know other senators have ideas, and I look forward to hearing from them.
Colleagues, your diligent work has been vital in helping improve this bill and has provided an important opportunity for the Senate to strengthen the regulatory system.
Bill S-6 will help modernize existing rules to make it easier for Canadians to get things done and to set up regulators, stakeholders, and Canadians for success. Let's send this bill to the other place as soon as possible with a sticky note marked urgent. And then let's turn our minds to improving the regulatory system writ large. Merci.